Company on our radar today is Century Plyboards. The management of the company is with us. Mr. Keshav Bhajanka joins in. He's the Executive Director of the company. Very good morning to you, Mr. Bhajanka, and thank you so much for taking the time out for this discussion on Business Today TV. Of course, in the month of August, early in August, you reported your earnings, quarterly earnings, where there was a dip of about 13% in the standalone net profit at about 84 odd crore rupees. And the company said the net revenues from operations were somewhere to the tune of 882 odd crore rupees. Marginal growth over the last period's earnings as well. We'll discuss with you the earnings fine print and the outlook, but I want to first understand about the demand scenario. You will know we've been talking about how there is, the real estate space, the construction space is clearly buzzing in trade, and that augurs well for you as a company. I remember speaking with you in the Q4 earnings, where you did say that the demand was slightly sluggish. Has it improved in Q1, and what's the outlook now?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I think, there has been a little bit of a setback because of the interest rate hikes. So what has happened is that EMIs have gone up, and as a result of which, the decision to refurbish a newly purchased house has taken a slight bit of a backseat. You're seeing real estate sales are still good, and the sector is doing well. But I think the refurbishment or the renovation or the construction of a new home, that scenario has been deferred a little bit. So it is causing a bit of a demand shortage in the short term. But I'm sure that this is momentary. It could be for a quarter, 2 quarters. And going forward, demand recovery will be both strong and robust. I think H2 of this year should be reasonably good.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Bhajanka, and welcome to Business Today Television. Over the last 20 years, we've seen fabulous wealth being created by the ancillaries that supply to the real estate sector, whether it is companies such as yours or switch makers or tile makers. They've had a party that's lasted for decades, and I'm sure it's going to be the same case in the coming decades forward. Please share with us the amount of fresh capacity that's coming in for Century Plyboard. I see that you've introduced a lot of new products. How are you facing in the market, and what's the pipeline looking at over the next 2 quarters in terms of fresh capacity addition?
Good morning. It has been a very difficult party to get to. I think that, in terms of capacity addition, we are fairly confident on all our segments, and this reflects in the capital addition. I think if you look at the short term, next 2-3 quarters, we are adding a capacity in MDF in the state of Andhra Pradesh. It is a greenfield unit with 950 cubic meters of production capacity. We are adding a new laminate manufacturing unit, which comes on stream in H2 with larger size presses, again in the state of Andhra Pradesh. We are looking to add, on a slightly longer term, a plywood capacity in Hoshiarpur, which will commence from FY25. And secondly, we are also adding a particle board capacity in the state of Tamil Nadu, which will come into production in FY25 as well. So if you look at the 4 major segments, we're increasing capacity all throughout. The capacity increase in particle board and MDF is definitely larger because it requires larger size presses. In plywood and laminates, the capacity is to augment particular segments or particular geographies where demand still remains robust.
Okay. Mr. Bhajanka, I also wanted to understand your pricing strategy. In Q4, you had taken some price hikes. In Q1, have there been any price hikes further? And what's the outlook right there? And what is the margin outlook that you have for yourself for FY24?
Yes, in Q1 we have taken, rather in Q2, in the month of July, we have taken a further price increase in the plywood segment. There have been price corrections on the other end with regards to laminates and with regards to particle board, on account for laminates, for instance, due to lower raw material costs, and in the case of particle board, due to import competition. For this current financial year, our outlook is as follows. Plywood, we're looking at 13 to 15% EBITDA. For laminates, again, 13 to 15% EBITDA. For MDF, 25% EBITDA. And for particle board, 20% EBITDA margin.
It's very interesting, Sakshi. I was just seeing a comparative of Century Plywood with its four rivals, which is Green Lam, Green Panel, Stylum, and of course Green Ply. It's one of the best return on equity and net margins across the board at 20.1 and 10.22% respectively. So great going there, Mr. Bhajanka. I just needed to understand, of course, you launch new products to bring in higher margin products that will add to both your top line as well as your net margin. Tell us how raw material prices are moving in your industry, and what are you doing to curtail their rise? Are you integrating backwards as well?
Thank you for those kind words. I think that raw material in our industry is mostly commoditized. Today, for instance, timber. The majority of timber that we are using is agroforestry. Now, considering the forest laws in India, it becomes very difficult for a private player to get into agroforestry. So I don't think backward integration right now is really a focus. Having said that, there has been softening of certain prices. For instance, chemical prices have reduced drastically, as you are well aware, particularly the two chemicals that are predominantly used by us, such as phenol and melamine, have softened. And this has helped to ride over the drastic increase in raw material prices in the form of timber. Now, timber prices are likely to stay elevated for the next year, year and a half, which in the short term is definitely a concern for us. But in the long term, will ensure greater availability of timber and it will fuel our ability to grow further.
Okay. Mr. Bhajanka, I had to ask you, particle board and MDF are two of your key segments that actually contribute somewhere around 20% or so to the company's business overall. You've been talking to us about the additional greenfield capacity. What will this contribution reach to after this capacity addition? And over the next, say, 3 to 5 years, what could be the potential on the total turnover from these two critical segments?
I think the growth percentage in particle board and MDF is likely to be higher because of the lower base. If you look at the new capacity that we're adding in Andhra Pradesh, that should lead to a turnover of anywhere between 900 to 1,000 crores. If you look at the particle board capacity, the peak turnover is likely to be an addition of 500 crores. So these are going to contribute substantially to both our top line and bottom line going forward. The reason for the faster growth, as I've already explained, the total MDF industry in India today is 4,000 crores, whereas the plywood industry is 20,000 crores plus. So the MDF industry, I would still say, is in its nascency, and similar for particle board. As they grow, we would like to take up a larger portion of the growth there.
Okay. Mr. Bhajanka, you have a very, very strong balance sheet, and you've mentioned 4 capacity expansions coming in over the next 18 months or so. I see that your debt profile of about 244 crore rupees has gone up by 44% year on year, although at no stage is it bothersome because of the strength of the balance sheet. Any chances that you would prepay this debt, or are you completely comfortable with this level?
I think debt in the short term is likely to increase, but we're a very financially prudent company.
Absolutely.
The chairman's motto is turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is reality. So that is what we have abided by. However, you cannot risk losing out on growth for fear of some debt on the books. The majority of our expansion is going to be funded through internal accruals, and the debt that we do take on board is going to be more in the form of bridge financing because our cash flow, our accruals remain very strong. So I think you're correct. We'll be prepaying most of it.
Okay. And one more interesting statistics, Sakshi, I have shared with you. I just need to highlight the fantastic performance that Century Ply has given to its shareholders over the last 10 years. A 39% CAGR in the past decade, which has beaten both indices, the mid-cap and the FMCG index, by a very, very wide margin. And perhaps this is also one of the reasons why the company is very, how should I say, tightly controlled by the promoters. They own 73% stake. Mr. Bhajanka, fantastic returns. But any chances of dilution from here? 73% you own?
No, I think we are very very bullish on the company, and
Absolutely.
we practice financial prudence in our personal capacities as well. We are very frugal people, so no, there is no scope for dilution anytime in the near, medium, or long term as well.
All right. I just wanted to ask you on the exports outlook as well. If you could give us a sense, because the current global environment is a little uncertain. What is the outlook that you have here?
So in exports, predominantly we export from one of our divisions, which is laminates. And there too, if you look at the overall revenue of the company, our total share of exports would be less than 5%. But there are segments where we are not present. For instance, the cubicle segment or the larger size segment where we haven't created any capacity till now. The capacities in Andhra Pradesh are both directed towards this, and we see fairly robust growth in exports, predominantly due to a very negligible base on our part. Going forward with the new port or close to port based capacity in both particle board and MDF, there will be potential to export both as well. Our target, as always, remains the domestic market. Like I've said, we are very bullish on India as the future. So while that holds true, whenever there is an opportunity to profitably export, we'll definitely be trying to avail the same as well.
Mr. Bhajanka, there is no doubt in my mind when you go shopping to set up interiors of your home, the kind of margins that your company and your peers enjoy, it really, really hurts the wallet. But if one is a shareholder, then one is really, really very happy. I needed to understand that there is, I believe, a lot of idle capacity in your part of the world when it comes to smaller unlisted players. In a bid to expand growth, are there any takeovers, mergers, or acquisitions planned?
I think, we are a little ruthless when it comes to capacity expansion. If you look at plywood or laminates, then we have a firm belief that when we can create a capacity at a lower per unit cost, then it does not make sense to go into takeover sort of a structure. However, having said that, if a good opportunity presents itself at the right valuation, we will definitely look out for the same because, as I've already mentioned, we are bullish on growth. In MDF and particle board, there are far limited opportunities. If you look at particle board, there are three players some who have not even commissioned, who have continuous presses in the country. If you look at MDF, there are five. So the options are quite limited. But yes, if a lucrative opportunity presents itself, why not? However, it has to be at the correct valuation. It has to generate the sort of revenue and margins that we intend at a lower cost than it takes to set up.
Okay, well, many thanks, Mr. Bhajanka, for being with us on this special edition and discussing
Thank
with
you
us
so much.
all those insights about the business outlook. All the very best for the coming quarters as well. We hope to have you back on Business Today TV pretty soon.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.